Welcome to the Undeletable Dad podcast. I'm Tracy Poisner, and my guest today is Drew Soleyn, who is the director for Dad Central Ontario in Canada, and he's the creator and co-host of the Dad Central Show, a podcast that helps dads raise confident and successful kids while coaching them to be their best. He's a dad to 5 children in a blended family and considers fatherhood his most important role. He holds associate coach certification from the International Coach Federation and is a Maxwell leadership coach, speaker, and trainer. Welcome, Drew, and thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Tracy. It's a real honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too, because as we just got started a little bit now, I'm excited to hear what you're going to talk about today. Why don't you just start, if you would, by giving us a little bit of background, whatever you're comfortable with, about your own personal situation, because I know obviously you're in a blended family, so you have some experience that will correspond to what our listeners are going through.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to enter fatherhood way back in 2013 and with twins. So, one of my good friends was speaking to me, and I said, "Hey, we were obviously overjoyed because the process to become parents was actually fraught with some challenges, possible infertility, possible, those things. And so the fact that we naturally conceived twins at that was like amazing to us.
Yeah.
And he says to me, as soon as I told him, like it's not just like we're having twins, he's like, "Oh, you're, fill in the blank, expletive deletive." So I was like, "Oh, whoa, hold on a second here. Like this is exciting to me, right?" So,
Yeah.
being a dad was something that was important to me right from the start. So, that was the, entrance into fatherhood. And then of course having twins is not easy. But overjoyed, and then fortunate enough to have another child born a few years later. My twins were 2.5, so toddler twins plus a newborn. It's challenging, stressful, and so I think at that time began to see some of the cracks in the foundation. So obviously, I've been fast forward. Separation happened March 2021, and it was shocking to me, how it began to evolve, because right away I was thrust into a child and family services investigation, claiming that I was abusive to our children.
Hmm.
So it's been, I obviously I've been separate, as I said, since March 2021, but I'm still going through these aspects. I have a trial scheduled in June of this year, because as much as I was shocked at what was going on, and I used every available, you know, avenue to try and resolve these things and move forward in a positive way because of our children, because of their needs, because my goal was to have them minimize the amount of trauma that they were going to experience having a family breakup. Um, the courts unfortunately believe some of the false accusations and things were part of the unbelievable affidavit that was put in when I took my ex to court, because I couldn't believe what was going on. And they have awarded a schedule that is still not 50-50, based on, again, some of these accusations. So that is where I'm still at as far as the separation. But I'm been blessed to meet a wonderful woman, uh, a few, well, I guess about 14 months after this whole separation. And we are creating our new family, while still healing from the wounds of our old families. So not easy, challenging. And of course, while all this is going on, I'm trying to continue building my career, continue to actually serve in my role with Dad Central Ontario to support fathers being more positively involved in the lives of their children, and equipping them with the tools, the resources, as well as educating those who work with fathers and families on the importance of the role of a father to every child's healthy development, and
Amen.
how to positively and effectively engage with fathers so that they can become more positively involved in the life of their child, so that it impacts the child and their development in the positive ways that when a father is involved. So that's what I've been, navigating the last few years to bring
Yeah,
people into some of the
you're
story.
busy.
Yeah, we got a lot going on for
Yeah.
sure.
Um, Let me just, sorry, I'm organizing my camera here. Um, Tell me a bit more about the history of dadcentral.ca. So this is a Canadian resource, but clearly it's available online. And so
Yes.
I imagine that people outside of the country can access it. And there is a lot of wonderful free resource available there. So truly, like, every dad can be looking there to find something that's going to help them in some way. But how did this get started? How broad is it?
Yeah, so the history of Dad Central, when it started, it was a research project basically funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, uh, to determine, when a father's involved, does it have any impact on, early childhood? So sort of that 0 to 6. And again, it wasn't called anything. I think it was Father Involvement Initiative Ontario. And, what the findings revealed were pretty significant. And so then it spawned more. Oh, let's get more
I'm curious, like
resources.
who wanted who wanted this data? Oh my gosh, my computer is somehow not plugged in. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I don't know the full details, but I believe that there are individuals within the public health agency, as well as some of the family service organizations, who felt there was a gap, and they wanted to shore up that gap, but do it by gathering relevant data to validate some of their beliefs, or the information that they had gained. And so I believe that's what the goal was. And so those projects led to more projects, led to a little bit more funding. And of course, as the research just began to pile up, I think it was in 2007, what we affectionately call, the Convincers, which was a research report published by, I think it was Carrie Daly and some at the University of Guelph, along with two or three other colleagues, that really, I think, cemented the unequivocal evidence of when you have a positively involved father, here are the proven positive impacts when it comes to child development outcomes. And every single marker, essentially, you see this type of positive difference. And so from there, I think it built a more collaboration, more people coming on to, saying, yes, we see this, we believe this, we want to help support it. And then in 2009, a man by the name of Brian Russell became involved. And he was working in a family service organization in the GTA at the time. And then he began growing a library of fantastic resources, gaining more funding and support to develop these resources, test them, put them into the communities, and gather more, again, evidence-based feedback for the validity of them in terms of moving fathers into becoming more positively involved and the impact for children. And so back in 2014, that collaboration began to grow across the country. Province of Alberta, I think, was very significant in this as well. And so this network of professionals came together and they created the name Dad Central because of, I believe, the central role that fathers play in the healthy development of children. And the focus of the organization from its inception has always been about children, which is interesting because, Dad Central is the title because, dads, we want to engage and support and involve fathers more in the lives of their children. We see the positive impact. So that's a little bit of history. And then I got involved in 2019. And at that point, I saw an amazing um, resource library, but there was no dedicated plan or way to get these resources into the hands of more people. I think they were very focused on serving those who serve families in some of the socially and economically disadvantaged populations. So very much a social service. I thought there are more people out there who need this and want this and are looking for it. So how do we do that? And so the shift that we've really focused on since 2019, which was accelerated in 2020 when the pandemic hit, was we need to be front and center for dads where they're at. And
Right.
everyone literally has one of these smartphones
Yeah.
that I'm holding up. And
Yeah.
that's where dads are. Dads are like in these I want to moments, I need to moments, how do I moments.
How do I
We
do
needed
it?
to be
Yeah.
front and center right in front of them. And so that's been our focus. How do we shift and be digital first for those who want us and need us, but then continue with the core of our what we were built on, which was research, efficacy, and advocacy for working with those who serve families.
Great. I'm still, I've got this like craw in my brain here, going back to what you described at the beginning, because I'm trying to imagine in what kind of world would there ever be a survey or a research project involving government funding to find out how mothers are impactful to children. Like I'm so curious about um the the state of mind that is looking for, like, what generates this. And so from my perspective, okay, I can see this. I talk a lot about this degradation of fatherhood over the
Mm,
last 50, 60, 70 years, having to do with the way motherhood has, or the way, women in general have been empowered to be more than just stay-at-home moms and to have value in the workplace. It's like a similar kind of study about, how could women have value in the workplace kind of thing, right? Like how do dads have value in the healthy development of their children? It's, to me, where I'm standing, it's almost a ridiculous question, but the part that's not ridiculous at all is that individual fathers feel like, um, yeah, maybe the other dads are important, but like I couldn't possibly be that person who's so important. Or the idea that so many, it's been so overdone, like in magazines and media, that the in what we're asking for dads to do is to spend more time doing mom work with the kids. Like that dads can also change diapers and give baths and learn how to give a bottle and feed, and dads can read stories and go to the park. And it's like, that's not what we're talking about. Like, fatherhood is its own thing that has value for children in ways that have become lost to us for various social reasons. So, like, I'm really happy that this work was done and that it becomes validation for dads who maybe shouldn't need it, but they do, because they've been conditioned for such a long time to believe that their contribution is to watch what mom does and to do that more of the time. That's not it at all. That's what I think. I don't know what you think about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think you touch on quite a few important points, and some of them go very, very deep. But I will approach just my comment based off of, some of this research and understanding, in that dads and moms are both significant, and they both have unique contributions to make to the
Right.
healthy development of a child. And and both moms and dads can do similar things in terms of behaviors, or the characteristics that they bring. Yeah, dad can easily change a diaper, just like a mom
Of
can
course.
easily, play with their child and be rough and tumble. So, which is typically, you hear more dads doing that, but
Yeah.
both parents can do all these things. But what I think, the where we want to stick is recognizing that both parents have unique contributions, and that mothers have strengths and fathers have strengths. And each of those strengths contribute to the whole of the healthy development of the child. And when you diminish one over the other, you actually do a disservice to the child. They're the
Exactly.
ones who suffer the most. And when you go talk about this individual, fathers don't feel like they have value. Well, one of the biggest things that we try to do is to help fathers see the unique strengths that they bring, and to do more of that. Now, I'm a Maxwell leadership, trained, John Maxwell's world's
Hmm.
best leadership trainer. One of the principles that he talks about is developing your strengths.
Yeah.
And whereas a lot of the, you know, pundits, or the way that people have taught it before, is you minimize your weaknesses, always work on your weaknesses. He's like, no, recognize he's like, I'm only good at these two things. But guess what? I developed them so well. Now I'm the world's best. And those, and so the idea is, when you find your strengths, develop your strengths more. doesn't mean that you ignore your weaknesses. You just shore them up, surround yourself with other people who are better at those weaknesses than you, equip them well, develop strong and healthy relationships, and see the benefit for everyone involved.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. And it's so easy for dads who have gone through separation and divorce, and very often, as in your own case, like dramatic situations of false allegations or rejection by the kids or whatever might be happening. um, it's so easy to have your attention directed to what you perceive to be your weaknesses, or to be feeling weak in the situation in terms of not being able to get it under control, to get this runaway train under control. So looking to your strengths feels counterintuitive a lot of the time. It's like, well, where does that apply? Like, you know, but um, uh, I think it's a really important step to changing that mindset, that the sort of, I'm going to call it the victim mindset that can easily take hold of, like, everybody's against me, all this bad stuff is happening to me, I've kind of lost my power in the situation. So as we're talking about,
Can I
yeah,
just
please.
touch on that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yes, I know that well. Like I've gone through that. You know, you feel under attack. You feel like, you're the fault. You're to blame. It's all you. And then in terms of the isolation, feeling completely alone, completely not understood. No one's there to actually help you because you feel like everyone's looking at you with like, oh, look at you. You're like,
yeah,
it's it can be debilitating
yeah,
100%. And so if anyone who's listening can relate to that, I know the pain that
yeah.
brings. And so I think, I'll turn it back to you. I just wanted to comment on that. I know
Oh
that well.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And um I guess where I weigh in, or where I want to focus, is this particular space, as you talk about, like, this debilitating pain and isolation that you're experiencing as a human being, and somehow finding a way um, to take care of that in a way that is um, distinguished in some way from your critical role as a father, that doesn't get dragged down with you, because you can continue to stand up as a father from a place of, well, you're going to talk about, your the three elements there, which I think are excellent ones, but you can continue to engage with responsibility in a way that feels different than um, what your victimized self is experiencing as a person. And I think the resources that have to go towards helping dads um get through a, the like the emotional drama of this terrible time, right? We can help them do that, and also to be able to continue to stand up in their role as a father with a different part of themselves that can continue to function.
Yes, I think that's very well said. And it reminds me of, the my experience going through this constant attack, like feeling bewildered, shocked, confused, and just so angry
Yeah,
at the injustice of the
yeah,
fact that these
yeah,
lies, these these attacks were
yeah,
continuing, and over and over and over. And so, um, when I think about my experience and what's helped me, especially, you talked a little bit about it, separating them, the responsibility of your father, but then the very real, I'm just
hmm,
going to use our pain going
yeah,
through this experience. And in order to do one, you have to do the other.
yeah,
And in order to be able to fully, or as best as I can, handle my responsibility, I needed to be able to actually acknowledge even experience the pain so that I could do. They're kind of like a virtuous cycle. The
Yeah,
more that you get stuck in the pain, and it debilitates you, and you stay in the victim mentality, and you feel powerless, you feel helpless, the less you're able to actually engage in the responsibility of being able to show up for your child in the way that they need you through this time. Because guess what? They're going through a ton of pain as well. In fact, and they don't have the maturity, depending on how they are, the
mm,
maturity, the resources,
the
the
resources.
support to be
Exactly.
able to move through it in a healthy way. And so that's why your role as a father, your it is actually to get into that pain and to process that pain and to go, and it sucks. It's terrible, but you need to do that as a dad so that you can show up the way that your child needs you through this time, and you can be as whole, as healthy, as loving, as relational as possible so that they can be anchored to
Right.
you, so that they can weather the storm of this pain that they're also experiencing.
Yeah, very well said. I love that. So, um, talk about these. You were going to share something, I think. Did you want to share your screen?
Yeah, going back to this idea of the value of fathers
Yeah.
to children
Yeah.
and how important fathers are to them. I can share this research that we did back in 2020 with Dr. Jessica Ball. She's an early childhood development researcher at the University of Victoria, and she reviewed over 245 studies between the year
Oh, wow.
2015 to 2020, mostly in North America, but some in the UK and some in New Zealand, around some critical pieces around father involvement. So 2007, we had the convincers. I'd say 2020, we have the exclamation point. And so I want to share this infographic that we created, built off of a compilation of these 245 plus studies about the critical role of fathers in building healthy kids and
I'm shocked
families.
to learn that there are 245 studies about that. I mean, I think it's amazing.
Well, there are more. There are a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And so as you can see here, positive father involvement is important for children. It improves their social and emotional wellness, their academic achievement, their physical health, and their adjustment to becoming parents themselves. Now, this is just a short excerpt. I mean, the amount of points that we created when we were, about to design the infographic, we had to pare it down to the
Yeah.
the most impactful. And so, when you have a dad who's positive involved, it impacts their brain development, helps them build healthy emotions, helps them learn to relate to others better, and around their physical health and development. A couple of ones that I think really stand out to me when you look at brain development. Fathers who are sensitive, calm, and less anxious have infants who score higher in mental development.
Wow.
Um, you know, Dads, when they're positively involved, reduces depression in pre-adolescence and as kids age. And we
Perfect.
did a podcast with Dr. Stuart Shanker of the Merit Center back in 2022, and he talked about the explosion of child-related stress or child stress-related disorders. You want to reduce that? Have dads more positively involved in the lives of children, because it significantly impacts their emotions, which is the core of, people say mental health. It's emotional health.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's the emotions that are wreaking this havoc. So
I just
when
want
you
to
have
say,
dads
sorry, I'm going to
involved, it
interrupt for
helps.
1 second just to say
Yeah.
that if you're listening on the podcast and not watching, this infographic will be linked in the show notes. Okay. So this is a great kind of poster to have um, to have available for yourself. It's this is great. So that kind of real research outcomes about these
Yeah.
things.
And another one, when you look at the ability of a child to relate to others, will always be relating to others. The quality of the relationship between father and child is a factor in reducing challenging behaviors in early childhood as well as later delinquency.
Wow.
I mean, how powerful is that?
Very.
And then for adolescents living in vulnerable communities, positive relationships with others who are also school involved can reduce problems associated with poverty and social disadvantages.
And this is such a great, like, I'm just thinking about ways in which fathers could use this uh, this research and even this infographic to assert the importance of their presence in their child's life. It is not okay for anyone to think that um, that the dad somehow doesn't matter. That that in a court situation, in a mediation, in even just in discussions between mother and father, these things are real. And if mothers want these outcomes for their children, they have to be looking to dads who they may have divorced and not want to have a relationship anymore. But for the sake of their children's development, this is scientifically, um, you know, necessary. It's a prerequisite to this kind of healthy development. So this is powerful stuff to have access to this um, exclamation mark, as you said, this proof, these convincers that help people who are skeptical about like, yeah, whatever, mom can do that too. They don't really need their dad. I guess they just need to see him once in a while. It's really not true. These are prerequisites for healthy development.
Yeah, very well said. The other thing I'll add to that is I think the this is again my limited experience, but I think the argument goes is the father's not safe for the child,
Right.
right? They try and create the perception that the father's unsafe, and so whether they and so if that's the case, no amount of trying to convince them that fathers are important will change their mind. There and here's the thing, and the family court system, there's a playbook, and the playbook is designed to, I'll say what it is, screw fathers.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the systems
Well, it's designed to
associated with
make
the
money.
family.
It's designed to make money, and
Yeah,
the
so
degree of conflict is likely to increase the degree of dollars that flow through the
the
system.
system's set up for fathers to fail. It's an adversarial system. It's not
Yeah.
a collaborative system. It's also biased and fraught with so many, you know, old ideas that are not actually grounded, as you said, in science, in the truth
Yeah.
of what a positive father, and the lawyers know the playbook and they follow the playbook to a T.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, back to this idea of emotions, it's the emotion or emotions of the party or parties that make these choices on how to that impact the children. And as adults, as healthy adults, we need to make choices that are protecting children, not putting them into the eye of the storm and actually harming them. So
Yeah.
that's my little aside. We can provide evidence, provide information. I think the most valuable part is that a father sees this and knows unequivocally he is so important, he is so needed, and those children will be the better for it when he is positively involved in their lives. And he then takes that and learns how to control and build the support system around him to allow him to build that relationship in a way that's going to transcend no matter what's going on in the atmosphere around him.
Awesome. Awesome. I just love this. That we could probably go on all day about this. But
Yeah.
was there a second infographic
Yeah,
that you wanted to
there's another
show?
slide. So there's another one which really talks about this idea of what is positive father involvement. Great, Drew. I believe I'm important, but like, what does that look like?
What
What
does it look
matters?
like?
Like, how do I be positively involved? And so this is a model, and that was again built through the research. So let me share this slide, or this infographic as well. And the title is "What is positive father involvement?" And so I'm going to read this as the most important part of, I'd say, this infographic is: while it is important for fathers to have the time to be with their children, the most influential factor, I'm going to say it again, the most influential factor impacting positive father involvement is the quality of the relationship between father and child. And, dads who are isolated, alienated, unable to see or very limited in time with their children, there are many things you can do to build the relationship even without that time. And so that's just an important, I think, point
I
I think
love
dads
that
should
you
really
said
know.
that so much. Say that again. There are many things you can do.
There are many things that fathers can do to build the relationship with their child, even if the time is not given. Now, there are many
Absolutely.
factors that may still come against that, but if nothing else, you have to demonstrate that you've made the effort and that you never know when that effort could create a breakthrough, or at least let your child. I had a great friend, talking to me as I'm going through this whole challenging situation, and he asked me this question, Drew, like, looking back, let's say 10 years from now, and your child comes to ask you the question, like, well, dad, why didn't you fight for me, or why didn't you do that? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah.
And he's like, how would you want to answer that question? So I said, well, I'd want to answer the question. I did everything I could, everything in my power to be able to be there for you or to get there. And so he's like, well, that answers your question, Drew. What are you going to do next? You know what you have to do. And so it was at a critical decision point in terms of, like, all the barriers seemed to be stacking up against me. All the things were coming against me. And I was like, how am I going to, how am I going to get through this? And so I thought it was a powerful question. So I figured I'd share it there because, um, many dads give up. Many dads say it's not worth it. Many
Right.
dads say it's too painful. I don't have the money. I don't have whatever it is. And I will never, I can completely relate and understand to a dad who feels those feelings. I've felt them myself. And so, but there's always a choice, and you have to just make those choices. And that, for me, that friend and that question really set things straight for me, no matter what was coming up. And so
And
again, I
doing
had
everything
things I
that
could
you
do.
can, doing everything that you can does not have to mean um, continuing to pour money into the family court system. There are
Correct.
so many things that you can do to continue to reach out, to connect, to maintain this quality relationship with your child, even if it feels to you like a one-way relationship, because that's something that a lot of the dads in my community are dealing with, where
Yes.
the kids who are alienated believe that they are refusing from a place of personal autonomy. They don't understand how they're being played. They don't understand how they're being emotionally manipulated. And so there are so many ways to maintain this contact. I don't know, I probably haven't shared this particular story with you, but it's a really good one. Um, an adult, who happened to be a stepmom, but it doesn't matter. An adult woman shared with me that she had been alienated from her father as a teenager when her parents split up. And she said that her dad tried to call her every week for 4 years. And she was so firmly, what she believed on her mother's side of the story. She said she never answered the phone once in 4 years that he tried to call her. And she said, when he finally stopped calling, it broke my heart.
Mhm.
And, what you have to understand from that is that he was maintaining a relationship with her only by his name showing up on the phone that she wasn't answering. That was a big thing for her. She didn't even understand it herself, but it meant, I'm still here. I'm still your dad. I'm not going away. And it was something for her to cling to in a way that she didn't even realize until he stopped calling. And she understood, that link had been broken. So the ways that you can be maintaining the relationship may feel invisible to you because you don't understand how they work, but they're there. They're absolutely there.
That's a great story, and it shows that impact that
It shows
dads
the
have,
impact. Exactly.
even at a distance. Even if they're shut out, the doors closed on them
Exactly.
every single time, it
Exactly.
still made a difference
Yeah.
for that woman.
And if I could think of all the dads who have said, well, my kids keep saying, Dad, just stop calling me. What don't you understand? I don't want to talk to you. And they don't know how to react to that without feeling that they're um, being somehow aggressive or bullying or showing that they're being domineering in some way. There are just so many gentle, appropriate ways of continuing to reach out so that you don't ever hear that question, Dad, like, why didn't you try harder or something, like you just keep being there so that at a certain moment, you don't know when it's going to happen, but suddenly, surprise, someone picks up the phone, or surprise, there's a text message that you haven't received in 4 or 5 years. Those things happen all the time. And as you said, you have to work on your own pain to ever get the joy of seeing that. If you let it win, if you succumb to that and give up, you don't ever get that moment. And there is a big difference. I say this too. I'm just going to throw it in there for whoever's listening. There's a big difference between taking a break and giving up. Like you don't have to feel that there are no moments where you get to kind of take a step back and regroup and lick your wounds. Like, you're a human being. You don't have to be there consistently without ever taking time for yourself when you need it. But you can take time and then you come back, and you don't have to make a decision about letting go or giving up that is permanent. It can take as long as it takes until you get your strength back, and then you get back in there.
I think that's so well said, and that was really resonating for me as well. Is that the best way to do that, or to stay engaged for the long haul? Oh, sorry, is you have to care for yourself. Number
Yeah,
one, you have to care for yourself. You have to surround yourself with the right people. You have to, work through the pain, the very real, deep, excruciating pain that's part of this process, and make sure that you've put the right things. At least take care of your body, right? Take care of your health. So take care of the things that are most important, those priorities in your life, to give you the best chance to be able to, as you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And
yeah.
sometimes that marathon is excruciating. I've got someone that I was fortunate to work with when he was a student, and now I'm not sure he's pursuing. He's already set a world record of completing, the youngest person to complete Ironmans on 6 continents.
Oh my goodness.
Under 30, he completed an Ironman on all 6 continents, and
Wow.
his
Wow.
goal this January was the seventh continent, Antarctica. He was going to run an Ironman length, um, yeah, in Antarctica. And
Wow.
so his name's Connor Emeny. He's a world record holder. He was on our podcast. But when I think about, this excruciating pain that he's gone through, like cutting holes in ice, in frozen lakes to train, he's put himself through some significant pain, but with a purpose.
Yeah.
And when you think about this journey, or this marathon of, overcoming alienation, it is absolutely an excruciating, painful journey, but there's a purpose.
Yeah.
There's a deep purpose. It's beyond yourself. It's for your child and for the impact that that can have in their life beyond when you actually complete this
Listen,
marathon.
this is how I got into this business. I stood beside my husband going through that excruciating pain
Mm,
for, I'm going to say, the better part of 10 years.
wow.
And when it finally seemed to be resolved, and I'm going to say that his kids are now between age 24 and 29, and it doesn't stop. There's still stuff going on that his kids are having to still process, stuff related to their mom's hostility and how much
Mhm.
she doesn't want them to have a relationship with their dad. But that's how I got into this. I could see how unbelievably valuable he is to his kids and how
Mhm.
desperately they want the connection with him, and how painful it is for them to navigate their mother's difficulty in accepting how valuable their dad is, because she mistakes that for diminishing her value. She thinks that if she has to share value with their dad somehow, that there's less available to her, which is such a wrong, whatever. Of course, it's wrong, but it creates so much uh, unnecessary drama. Those kind of wrong beliefs. I just want to ask you
Can
to
I can I
touch
just
on, yeah,
can
please
I
go
just
ahead.
reinforce that point
Yeah.
there? I've had to do a lot of, self study. Obviously, had lots of support as I've gone through this, but one of the most valuable has been, Bessel van der Kolk. He's the world's
Hmm.
leading trauma expert. He's got a great book, "The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Body, and Mind in
Yeah.
Healing of Trauma." He's got a very simple quote that I think really speaks to that. Our greatest source of suffering are the lies that we tell ourselves. And this person, unfortunately, she's telling herself some painful lies that
Yeah.
she's believing.
Yeah.
And the lie is that I'm not good enough if I can't have the kids all to myself. And that affects. And then another, great author, Craig Groeschel, in his book Winning the War in Your Mind, he says a lie that we believe to be true will affect our life as if it's true.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate, but
This is shadow.
yeah,
This is what I talk about on this podcast over and over again. Shadow is the lies, the inner voice that is
yeah,
telling you something that you think is true because it's you talking to yourself. And that's, this is the work that I do with my whole Bach flower alchemy system, is about moving through shadow and getting to the truth so that you can have a clear view of reality. And that's the place that you want to be taking action from. That's the place that you want to be moving from, is perceiving what's really true and not listening to any of the lies that you tell yourself. So that's yeah, the Body Keeps Score is a very important classic for anybody listening. Bessel van der Kolk is the author.
yeah.
Um, Something that we talked about just very briefly before we started to record was mistakes that fathers make regarding what constitutes positive father involvement. And it is a very common mistake among divorced and separated dads to believe that their interactions need to be positive. In other words, that they don't want to spend any of their limited time with their kids doing what I refer to as the heavy lifting of
Mm,
fatherhood, which is the discipline, boundaries, direction, redirection, correction, all of what they consider to be the negative interactions where you have to put limits, where you have to give timeouts or take away, give out consequences. Like, for very understandable reasons, dads don't want to ever have to give out consequences when you're only seeing your kids every other weekend or less. So, what can you say about how to understand positive father involvement in that, through that lens?
yeah, I think, a very important question. And there's, again, nuance and depth to that every circumstance or situation might be slightly different, but I think there are certainly some principles. So why don't I start by finishing off the bottom part of this
Oh yeah,
infographic,
please.
and then I'll maybe address specifically that question. So the bottom part of, like, what is positive father involvement? Well, there's a model of these three aspects that can all contribute to or be considered positive father involvement. There's the engagement, which is direct one-on-one time with a child. There's accessibility, so indirect involvement and availability of the father to the child. And then there's responsibility. And this is very much internal to the father himself, regardless of the circumstance. And that's attitude and commitment of a father to their child.
I love
When
that.
you have an alienated father, engagement and accessibility is severely limited. That's just the truth. But responsibility, the attitude, the internal factor, can't be. And so any one of those constitutes positive father involvement. The father who, for 4 years, made the phone call was obviously always thinking about his daughter, was always had on her mind. And so that
And he
is,
was engaged and accessible and responsible. He was covering all those three by
yeah,
just making phone calls that never got answered. This
right.
is what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. And so, you may feel you can't do anything, but when you have just the attitude and the thought, and take some steps, whether you actually get time with or get to be there to support, or hear from the child, you can still contribute from that perspective. So I just wanted to finish that off, and then maybe I can stop the share. And so, to address your question about, the buddy as
Yeah.
opposed to the father, I think it's challenging, especially for fathers who have been under attack. You are fearful. You're afraid. Everything maybe is being scrutinized. Every step that you take, you're being criticized. You've got a child who maybe is being, manipulated or you know, severely influenced to reject you. Creates a
Hmm.
ton. And so all I can say is the level of difficulty is very high. But to build a relationship, children still need structure. They still need boundaries, and they still need you to be dad and not just friend. Now, there's nothing wrong with friend, because maybe friend and commonality of, enjoyment on activities together, it's powerful to build the relationship. And one of the best things that fathers can do, I think, is go back to that what we talked about. What is your strength? What is your strength in relating to your child? Do you both like love a particular thing? And when you do that thing together, that's building the connection. Are you both into music, or are you both like, whatever it is, find the strength and build off of that. But you still must maintain healthy boundaries. Now this is where judgment and discernment comes in terms of, is this a time where I need to maybe just not worry about firmly reestablishing the boundary? Or is this a time where, I make sure that the boundaries are still consistent? And so maybe I'll give a ground this as an example. You know, with my children, my three kids, with my ex-wife, we have expectations around just communication. One of the challenges is that their tone of voice and their attitude from the other atmosphere is not calm, kind, and respectful. And especially when you have some emotions behind it. And so one of the boundaries I simply say is that, are you using a calm, kind voice? And obviously I have to model that first, but that's a boundary that I'm not willing to let go of, in terms of, you can still be upset, right? So I spent so much time on understanding emotions, and helping my children learn and understand their emotions, and then to be able to communicate those emotions in healthy ways, basically creating an emotionally and psychologically safe atmosphere. But those still have boundaries, and those boundaries are around healthy, respectful, like good behavior that builds or positive relationships. And so, you have to decide, I think, as a father, what boundaries are crucial and important, and what boundaries can you maybe situationally determine what matters most in this moment. So another example is, my kids would have a lot of big emotion when I had to transition them back to their
Yeah.
mother. And, that sometimes meant I was taking an extra half hour, 45 minutes to just create an atmosphere where these emotions could come out. They weren't respectful, they weren't calm, they weren't kind, but I wasn't bringing to them the fact that they couldn't be calm or kind. I was allowing them to get it out.
Yeah.
And we were late, or repeatedly, because I'm not forcing them into the car. I'm not pushing the boundary on them, because I could tell they needed
Yeah.
much more time and space, and to feel connected to me, even in this very highly emotional period of time. And so,
Yeah.
you have to use discernment and judgment, but you cannot completely forego healthy boundaries, and you cannot forego holding children accountable, or creating some form of structure around what is a reasonable expectation for behavior, and how you do things. So I think the biggest thing I would encourage any father who's struggling with that is, learn about how to build positive, I would say positive parenting strategies, as opposed to punitive parenting
Right.
strategies. Identify strengths in your children, affirm and reward those strengths, acknowledge when they're doing great things, catch them doing good things,
Yeah.
and talk more about those things. And the more that you do that, the more you'll see them move in that direction, as opposed to, clamping down, being harsh, all those other things, which are not a building, as we said on that graphic. The most important, most influential factor impacting positive father development is the quality of the relationship
Yeah.
between a father and child.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that that's a really good point about um, that catch me being good piece is really important about like affirming what they're good at, affirming when they do good things. You have to flip your mindset a little bit to be, it feels like sometimes it feels like just, how much of this, like, how much can I build my kids up? Like, oh, good job putting the milk back in the fridge, or whatever, like how far does it go? But that's what gives you, like, you bank those things, and then you have something to withdraw when it's time to say, no, you can't do that now. We already talked about that, right? Like when
Right.
you have to hold a limit, then you have all of that capital in the bank from acknowledging, like, you're doing this well. I see you. I appreciate you. And especially in a context of alienation, you've really covered this, but the three things that the alienator is telling the child is that you're not safe with your dad, you're not loved by your dad, and your dad doesn't really see you. He doesn't appreciate you. He doesn't understand you. And that's why we have to mindfully counter those things with, not by just saying that's not true, but by showing that it's not true. So, all the ways that I talk about in restorative parenting, about demonstrating how safe and reliable you are with nonverbal communication techniques that we work on, and ways of showing that the child is loved in ways that are meaningful to the child. And as you just said, noticing and appreciating their strengths and making sure to call them out, all of that gives you capital in the bank for when you have to gently and firmly hold the boundaries that they need, because the boundaries are part of your positive father involvement. They're a big part of it.
Yeah, a very big part. And the other point I'll add to what you're saying there is setting the limit with empathy and understanding. I know you don't want to stop playing the game right now. You're probably having a great time. I totally get that. If I was playing, I would feel the same way. But the time limit is reached, or it's now time to move to the bedtime routine, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Establishing the boundary and limit with understanding and empathy is a crucial piece, which when we're tired, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when we have our own pain, when we're triggered by the behavior that we see in our child that reminds us of our ex and it's not easy to do that. So I'm
Yeah.
in no way am I saying, oh, hey, it's all simple and good.
Just
When
do
you
this. Yeah.
reality is it takes a ton of work, a
Yeah.
ton of work. It's very hard, but the work is worth it.
Absolutely. Well, this has been incredible. This is so valuable, truly. Please tell the listeners where they can find you, and Dad Central, where they can access all this stuff.
Yeah, if anyone wants to reach out, I can be reached by email, drew@dadcentral.ca. You want to go find out more about Dad Central, go to dadcentral.ca. We've got a variety of free resources. We've got a course that I've developed called Fatherhood Fundamentals. It's an email course, sends you a lesson Monday and Thursday. I think it's pretty powerful, built off of John Maxwell's leadership stuff. We've got a community called Dad Mentor, which is basically a guide for
Amazing.
everything fatherhood. And so we've got obviously our whole library of resources. We've got monthly meetups. We've got master classes from guest experts. So Dad Mentor is
Fantastic.
basically just available for people to come and connect. And, we talk about the power of community on our podcast all the time. And that's what we've got with our Dad Mentor community. So dadcentral.ca, access all of that stuff.
This is a no-brainer, guys. Like, just go there and get what you need. This is the piece of taking care of yourself. This is it, right? We spoke a couple of weeks ago. I interviewed somebody who has a 12-step program for men and women dealing with parental alienation.
Mm,
So important
so
to get
important.
that kind of community support and mentorship. So definitely go there. We'll totally be talking again, Drew. This was just amazing. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Tracy. A real honor to be here, as I said. And whatever has been of value, I hope someone can take it and apply it to their situation and feel more empowered and equipped to handle whatever they're facing.
Awesome. And for Undeletable Dad, I'll just say that you can reach me at tracy@undeletabledad.com. And obviously that is our website. Go there for more information. Thanks very much. See you next time.